It started with a tweet, just a blurry picture of a train station clock reading 3:17 a.m., accompanied by the words, "If you ever see a train at this hour, don't get on, no matter what. Trust me." I scrolled past it like any other late-night internet rabbit hole. Just another attempt at going viral, I thought. But something about it bothered me, enough that I screenshotted it and kept it in my phone. 3 weeks later, I missed the last train home. I'd been at a friend's party on the far side of the city. Too much beer, too little attention to time. I ran into the station just as the 1:45 a.m. train was pulling away. The doors already locked. The station attendant was gone. Just vending machines and that persistent humming of old fluorescent lights overhead. I checked the schedule. Next train? 5:05 a.m. Screw it, I thought. I found a bench and lay down, using my backpack as a pillow. I didn't sleep exactly, just drifted in and out, listening to the distant squeal of rails and the occasional burst of static from an old intercom that hadn't worked in years. Then around 3:15 a.m., I heard the rumble. At first I thought I was dreaming, but the low vibration grew louder, more real. A headlight pierced the tunnel, and then there it was. A train. Sleek, black, unfamiliar. Not a logo or number in sight. Its windows were too dark to see inside, and it glided noiselessly, impossibly smooth, until it came to a perfect stop in front of me. The doors opened with a hiss. Nobody got off, no announcements, no lights, just an open door. I stood there, staring. That tweet came back to me in a flash. If you ever see a train at this hour. But it was cold. I was exhausted. Maybe this was a late-night maintenance car or a special service. My phone had no signal. I stepped on board. The moment my foot crossed the threshold, I felt it. Wrong. The air inside was stale and warm. The lighting flickered slightly, casting the whole car in an uneven yellow glow. I turned to step back out, but the door slid shut, nearly catching my coat. Then the train moved, no lurch, no sound, just movement. I stumbled into a seat. There were people, maybe 5 or 6, scattered through the car. Every single one of them sat perfectly still. Not asleep, just frozen. No blinking, no twitching. I cleared my throat. "Excuse me, do you know where this train is going?" No response. The man across from me had his eyes wide open, fixed on the floor. His breathing was shallow. He looked terrified. I waved a hand in front of his face. Nothing. I tried the next person. A woman in a red coat, eyes fixed forward, unmoving. Something was wrong with their skin, pale, almost gray, like they hadn't seen sunlight in years, Then I noticed the advertisements above the windows. They were all wrong. The images didn't make sense. One showed a little girl holding a balloon, but her face was too long, too stretched. Another had a phone with too many buttons and letters I didn't recognize. And one just showed a black void with the words, "You are already on your way." I stood up, tried to open the door between the cars. Locked. I tried the emergency button. It clicked, but did nothing. The train kept moving. I pulled out my phone. No bars, no Wi-Fi. Not even the time showed, just a black screen. When I tried the camera, the screen showed a distorted version of the car, empty. No passengers, just me. That's when I knew I had to get out. I moved to the next car, kicking at the door until it groaned open. The next car was identical. Same flickering lights, same strange passengers. Only this time, one of them turned to look at me. A girl, couldn't have been more than 10. Her eyes were entirely black. She opened her mouth, and instead of words, a sharp ringing noise came out, piercing, like feedback from an old speaker. I covered my ears and ran. Car after car, I passed them. People with empty eyes, some whispering, some twitching, some simply watching me, unblinking. Eventually, I found a car that was empty. I collapsed into a seat, gasping. And then the window beside me lit up, not with daylight, but with images, like memories, mine. I saw myself at 7 crying in my room. At 16, breaking up with someone I loved. At 23, sitting alone on New Year's Eve. The train showed them all, one after another. every mistake, every moment of pain and shame, until it stopped on one image. Me, just moments ago, stepping onto the train. Then came the whispering, dozens of voices all at once surrounding me. Some called my name, some just laughed, others wept. The lights went out, total blackness. When they came back on, there was someone sitting across from me. Not a stranger, me, but older, thinner, hollowed out, the same clothes but faded. He smiled. "You should have stayed on the platform," he said. "It doesn't stop, you know." I stood. He mirrored me. I lunged. Everything shattered. I woke up on a bench, back at the same station. 5:08 a.m. The sun was rising. A regular train pulled in. People were getting on, talking, laughing, alive. I ran home and locked every door. But the worst part? Every night since, at exactly 3:17 a.m., I hear a faint rumble outside my apartment. I live nowhere near train tracks, and in my dreams, I'm still on board. The train never stops. And one day, I don't think I'll wake up. It's been 3 months. 3 months since the night I boarded that train. 3 months of waking up in cold sweats, of checking the clock at 3:17 a.m. like I'm possessed. 3 months of trying to tell myself it wasn't real. But last week, someone slid a note under my apartment door. No return address, no markings, just a folded piece of yellowed paper that smelled faintly of rust and engine grease. Inside, written in sharp, hurried handwriting, were the words, "You stepped off once. It won't let you do it again." Below it, a sketch of a train car, not just any car, the one I'd sat in. Down to the scratched seat I collapsed into and the cracked fluorescent bulb above it. That same night, I found a fresh set of scratches on my apartment door. 4 long, jagged lines, too high up to be a prank from a neighbor kid. I live on the 7th floor. No balcony. I did what any desperate person would do. I searched. Forums, archived threads, old paranormal blogs, hidden subreddits, every strange train story I could find. Most were fake, clearly written for entertainment. But one thread chilled me to my core. It was called The Black Line. Only one post was still visible. Titled, "Those who board the 317 never come back the same." I clicked it. Inside, a collection of grainy photos, distorted selfies with dark train windows behind them, messages in broken English, in other languages I didn't understand, and a video, just 19 seconds long. A man shaking and whispering into the camera. It found me again. I left it. I got off, I swear, but the stops don't mean anything. It's still moving. It's always moving. Behind him, a faint chime, a train bell, then static. The thread was gone the next day. Last night it happened again. I was walking home from a late shift. I hadn't taken the subway since that night, but something compelled me. I told myself it was time to face it, time to prove it wasn't real. The station was empty, cold, the lights dimmer than usual. And then I heard it, that same low, metallic rumble, that impossible smoothness, that whisper of doors opening without a sound. I turned to run, but I couldn't move. Not because I was paralyzed, because the ground beneath me had changed. No longer cement and tile, but smooth metal, a train platform that stretched into an endless black tunnel. There were no walls, just void. The train stood before me, open again. This time, it didn't wait for me to step on. The platform tilted, slowly, gently, and I slid inside. The interior had changed. Gone were the frozen passengers and flickering lights. Now the car was bright, sterile, clean, too clean. The walls shimmered slightly, as if alive, like skin stretched over machinery, and the only sound was my heartbeat. I moved forward. Each car I passed grew stranger. One filled entirely with mirrors, each one reflecting not me, but different versions of me. One with no floor, just darkness stretching infinitely downward. One that looked like my childhood bedroom, rotting slowly from the corners. And then I found the control room, a massive wall of switches and dials, all labeled in symbols I couldn't read. But one screen showed something I recognize. My apartment. Live feed. Another showed my parents' home. Another the street outside my childhood school. It was watching. All of it. Always. And then I saw the final monitor. Or a single dark tunnel, no tracks, just an endless, yawning mouth of shadow. Below it, flashing in red, final destination, passenger memory collapse imminent. I turned, and there he was again. The older version of me, except now he had no eyes, just hollow sockets and a grin too wide to be human. "You can't keep getting off," he whispered. "You belong to the motion now." I screamed. I don't know what I said. I just remember running through endless eyes, endless faces. Some familiar, some mine. I found a door labeled emergency exit and threw it open. Nothing, just sky. I leapt. I woke up in the middle of a field. Miles from the city, no shoes, no phone. But the tracks were beside me. Rusted, ancient, dead-ending into the dirt. As if no train had ever passed here. My hands were covered in soot. My back ached like I'd fallen from the sky. I walked for hours until I reached a gas station. They let me call a cab. I didn't explain. I didn't know how to. Now I write everything down because I know it'll come back. That train, it doesn't run on tracks. It runs on memory, on regret, on everything we try to bury, and it never stops. Every night I hear the hum, sometimes far, sometimes close. And when I sleep, I dream of steel corridors and faces that look like mine stretched into masks. I don't know how many times I've gotten off. I don't know how many versions of me are still on board. But I know this, next time, I won't escape. I stopped sleeping. It wasn't insomnia, it was survival. Every time I drifted off, the train was waiting. Sometimes I'd wake up in my bed, other times lying on the floor of a train here, bleeding from cuts I didn't have before. Once, I woke up with soot under my nails and metal shavings in my mouth. I tried everything, caffeine, cold showers, even sleeping pills to test if it was in my mind. But that only made it worse. The deeper I slept, the deeper I went into it. I started seeing things while awake, reflections of train windows in my bathroom mirror, the faint ding-ding of platform chimes in grocery stores, people on the street who looked at me just a second too long, like they recognized me from somewhere, but couldn't remember where. It got worse last Tuesday. I got into an Uber, just trying to clear my head, drive somewhere, anywhere. The driver didn't say a word, just nodded. Halfway through the ride, I looked up. No city, no road, just tracks, stretching endlessly ahead. The driver turned to me. His eyes were two blinking red signal lights. "We've been waiting for you to stop pretending," he said. I kicked the door open and rolled into a ditch. I work nights, janitor. Been doing it for 12 years. That's probably why I never thought twice about using the train past midnight. Cheap, quiet, predictable. The 1:10 a.m. from the Lower East Terminal is usually empty. Maybe a couple drunks, a night shift nurse, and me. That night wasn't any different at first. The train pulled up late, not too unusual. What was unusual was that it only had one car. A single matte black car. No lights in the windows, no number painted on or the side, just an open door, hissings as it waited. I stepped on. The interior looked wrong. The lighting was dim, like it was filtered through old film. The seats were deep red, almost black in the shadows, and there was a smell like damp cloth and burned wires. I was alone, not another soul in sight. Whatever, I thought. Beach sharing a car with some guy vomiting tequila. The door slid shut behind me without a sound. The train began to move. No lurch, no engine whine, just motion, smooth and silent, as if the whole world had started sliding. I took a seat near the back, leaned my mop against the window, closed my eyes for just a second. When I opened them, I wasn't alone anymore. There was a man sitting across from me. I hadn't heard him come in. He was dressed like a 1950s undertaker. Black suit, black gloves, black hat. His face was off, not disfigured, just too still, like he'd forgotten how to be human. He smiled, wide, too wide. "You've stayed late," he said. I tried to chuckle. "Night shift. Comes with the territory." He didn't blink. Not everyone finds their way to the last car. I looked around. The windows now showed nothing. No tunnels, no lights, just static. Like looking into an old TV tuned to a dead channel. "Where's the rest of the train?" I asked. He smiled wider. "Gone ahead. We follow last." Then he vanished. No puff of smoke, no flicker, just gone. I stood up. My legs didn't want to cooperate. Every step felt heavier. I walked the length of the car. The far end had a door, but instead of leading to another car, it opened into a stairwell. A stairwell, inside a subway car. It descended in tight spirals, lit by old lanterns that swung without wind. I didn't want to go down, but the car behind me was no longer there, just black wall, so I descended. The stairs went on forever. Literally, my watch stopped. My phone was dead, but I felt myself growing tired, hungry, cold. Eventually, I reached a door. It was labeled, "Care." I opened it and stepped into the strangest thing I've ever seen. It was a train car, but larger than physics should allow. Endless rows of seats, no roof, no walls, just floating chairs in an infinite space. Each seat held someone. Some were screaming, some crying, some completely still. Their faces were blurred, like someone had smeared wet paint over their identities. One turned toward me. Its face snapped into focus. It was me. Not just similar, me exactly. Same scar on the chin, same tired eyes. He opened his mouth. "Not all of you left," he whispered. "Some of us stayed." He reached toward me with a trembling hand. I ran. No matter how far I went, the chairs continued. The void around me pulsed like it was alive, and whispers chased my every step. Then I saw a light, a red exit sign hanging in midair. I lunged for it. I woke up in my bed, sweating, shaking. It was 4:04 a.m. My mop was gone, but on the kitchen table, wet and dripping, was my employee badge, melted. I first heard about Car 108 from a dying man in a bar. He was a retired train conductor. Face like sun-bleached leather, eyes sunken and wet. He asked if I'd ever taken the midnight line out of Dominion Station. I hadn't. He nodded like he expected that. "If you do, never sit in the far end of the third car, not unless you want to ride forever." He laughed when he said it, but there was no humor in his face. A week later, I saw his obituary in the local paper, "Heart failure, found alone." The photo showed him smiling, but all I could think about was how much he'd looked like a man who'd seen something wrong. I didn't think about it again until last Tuesday night. The power was out at home, and I'd stayed late at the university lab. I had one option to get across town, the last train out of Dominion. 12:17 a.m., platform 6. When it arrived, it was already half empty. Dingy lights, old paint, worn velvet seats that stank faintly of mildew. I boarded the third car. Out of morbid curiosity, I walked to the far end. The seats were all empty, except one. A man sat there, back straight, staring out the window. His hands were clasped tightly in his lap. He didn't look up when I walked by, didn't blink. I took a seat 3 rows behind him. The train started moving. About 10 minutes in, I noticed something strange. We weren't stopping. No stations, just tunnels. Endless tunnels. And I hadn't seen any conductor come through. I stood up, walked back into the second car. It was empty. No, not empty, abandoned. The lights flickered wildly and the walls were coated in thick soot. A broken suitcase lay open on the floor, its contents rotted. This wasn't the car I had passed through earlier. When I turned back toward the third car, the door was gone. In its place, a solid wall of rusted steel. I ran forward. The first car, same. Deserted. Worse even. I saw dried handprints along the windows. Deep gouges in the seats. Something had clawed its way through here. I tried the emergency brake. It snapped off in my hand. No signal on my phone. No time on the screen. Just black. I screamed. I pounded on the door. Nothing. Eventually, I returned to the third car, to him. He hadn't moved. "Excuse me," I said. "Do you know what's going on?" Nothing. I walked closer. His eyes were open but unseeing. His mouth moved. "This is where it starts." "What?" He turned to me very slowly. His pupils were dilated so wide his irises were gone. "We passed the station an hour ago. You didn't feel it because you chose to stay." I backed away. "You're not making sense." He stood, and then he smiled. It was the worst thing I've ever seen. Not because it was grotesque, because it was familiar. It was my smile. I ran. I didn't care what direction. I tried to break windows, tried to crawl under seats. I screamed until my throat bled. And when I finally collapsed, I was in the last row of car 108. But it looked different now. The walls were alive. They pulsed. They breathed. Every so often they whispered, "Stay seated. We're almost there. It's not your turn yet." All the continuation and 2 expansions follow here, trimmed in code to keep clean. The eternal compartment. The eternal compartment. I first heard about car 108 from a dying man in a bar. He was a retired train conductor, face like sun-bleached leather, eyes sunken and wet. He asked if I'd ever taken the midnight line out of Dominion Station. I hadn't. He nodded like he expected that. "If you do, never sit into the far end of the third car, not unless you want to ride forever." He laughed when he said it, but there was no humor in his face. A week later, I saw his obituary in the local paper. Heart failure, found alone. The photo showed him smiling, but all I could think about was how much he looked like a man who'd seen something wrong. I didn't think about it again until last Tuesday night. The power was out at home, and I'd stayed late at the university lab. I had one option to get across town. The last train out of Dominion. 12:17 a.m., platform 6. When it arrived, it was already half empty. Dingy lights, old paint, worn velvet seats that stank faintly of mildew. I boarded the third car. Out of morbid curiosity, I walked to the far end. The seats were all empty, except one. A man sat there, back straight, staring out the window. His hands were clasped tightly in his lap. He didn't look up when I walked by, didn't blink. I took a seat 3 rows behind him. The train started moving. About 10 minutes in, I noticed something strange. We weren't stopping. No stations, just tunnels. Endless tunnels. And I hadn't seen any conductor come through. I stood up, walked back into the second car. It was empty. No, not empty. Abandoned. The lights flickered wildly and the walls were coated in thick soot. A broken suitcase lay open on the floor, its contents rotted. This wasn't the car I had passed through earlier. When I turned back toward the third car, the door was gone. In its place, a solid wall of rusted steel. I ran forward. The first car, same. Deserted. Worse even. I saw dried handprints along the windows. Deep gouges in the seats. Something had clawed its way through here. I tried the emergency brake. It snapped off in my hand. No signal on my phone, no time on the screen. Just black. I screamed. I pounded on the door. Nothing. Eventually, I returned to the third car. To him. He hadn't moved. "Excuse me," I said. "Do you know what's going on?" Nothing. I walked closer. His eyes were open but unseeing. His mouth moved. "This is where it starts." "What?" He turned to me very slowly. His pupils were dilated so wide his irises were gone. We passed the station an hour ago. You didn't feel it because you chose to stay. I backed away. You're not making sense. He stood, and then he smiled. It was the worst thing I've ever seen, not because it was grotesque, because it was familiar. It was my smile. I ran. I didn't care what direction. I tried to break windows, tried to crawl under seats. I screamed until my throat bled. And when I finally collapsed, I was in the last row of car 108. But it looked different now. The walls were alive. They pulsed. They breathed. Every so often, they whispered, "Stay seated. We're almost there. It's not your turn yet." That's all for today's stories. Let me know in the comments what you'd like to hear next time. Don't forget to support the channel with a like and a subscription. Bye for now. See you soon.